to introduce our next speaker, our next session. This dynamic panel features some nominees of the 2021 Community Industry Awards. Our speakers were all nominated for Community Professional of a Virtual Events Program. Today, they will share their insights on virtual events, community, and all things adapting on the fly. This conversation will be moderated by Michel Sayo, Virtual Conferences and Community Events at Bevy. Please welcome to our stage, Erin Flannery, Head of Events at Lattice, Vera Devera, the Community Builder at Ironclad, and Nicole Felter, the Associate Marketing Manager at Power to Fly.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you for that introduction. And I'm really excited to chat with this group of community professionals today. Just want to kind of get started and get into it. Really want to hear thoughts at top of mind of everyone today. If everyone can explain a little bit about what you do with your companies and how virtual events are involved in your role.
I can go ahead and kick it off if that's okay. So hi, everyone. Super excited to be here. Very excited that 2020 is almost over. And so I'm the Associate Marketing Manager at Power to Fly. And so what that means in my current role is that I run all of our chat and learn programming and our office hours programming. And so that entails our community events as well as our client branding events. And so that's really where the virtual events are involved in my role. We host virtual events throughout the year, 2 to 3 times a day now. And so, you know, as you can imagine, I've been really busy, especially with all of these changes moving to virtual in 2020. And so, you know, I think what excites me most about my position and what excites me most about what I do and the passion that I bring into what I do is the fact that we're able to empower, upskill, and connect women, non-binary, non-gender conforming people and allies with women and people who identify as women to really share their professional and personal stories. And I can just see how much it's impacted me in this time. And so I really love getting to do this on a daily basis.
Thank you, Nicole.
Awesome. Okay, I'll take it next. I'm Erin. I'm the head of events at Lattice. Lattice is a HR software. I've been at the company for almost 3 years now, and we run about 30 to 40 events per year. You know, like everyone, our events program totally flipped this year, but we've always had a strong virtual events program, so it's really grown. We structure our events program very similar to like the marketing and sales funnel. So we do anything from a big kickoff or a big flagship event called Resources for Humans Virtual that happened in September. We do big top of funnel webinars, we do workshops, we do lunches, and of course we do community events. And so I'm really excited to be here today to talk about all of that.
And I've been leading the community building efforts and programming at Ironclad for almost 3 years as well. And we're a digital contracting platform for B2B SaaS, we're a B2B SaaS platform. So our events have always been primarily for community building because in-house lawyers and legal ops managers, that's our primary audience, they like to network in person. So we were supposed to host our very first conference on March 12th of this year, but of course that didn't happen. So we had to pivot completely. And so we've turned a lot of those events into virtual events. And so we do a mix of, you know, thought leadership webinars, virtual leadership roundtables, and social experiences, where before we were doing like in-person, you know, speed mentoring sessions and community dinners. And so we were able to bring those online. So I've been really excited about actually bridging the gap between like state lines and boundaries because it has erased those. So.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, to me, you are the type of superheroes that we really need today, especially when we're seeing people, how they are changing and transitioning their events from in-person, what we're used to, kind of networks we had, and moving that to a new virtual landscape that none of us have ever seen before and still unsure what the future looks like. So with the leadership in your hands, like there's so much that can be capable. So excited for everyone to be learning from what you guys have to offer. Nicole, I wanted to learn a bit more about PowerFly. It's been hosting virtual events Since before the rest of the world was hosting in virtual events, at Powerfly, how have you seen your community events change this year?
Yeah, I love this question. And so, every time I get on a chat and learn call, when I'm talking to a speaker that we're going to invite or with a client, I always tell them that, at this point, we're virtual events experts because last year alone, we held over 300 virtual events. And so, this made the transition relatively seamless. And I say relatively because I started in my position about 8 months ago. And so it was right around the beginning of the pandemic, which I think was a really great place for me to start because it was a really great time to bring in new ideas and to innovate on what we already had so developed and so streamlined already. And so that's been a really great time to include more events. And so moving from 2 to 5 events per week to 10 to 15, previously we were doing 1 community event per day, and now, as I said, we're doing 2 to 3 community events per day. And so I think that's helpful in providing the space for people to connect, especially those who have felt alone during this time. Even if you were living with people, I think it could get really lonely seeing the same people and maybe not being able to connect in the ways that you were before. And then, of course, also how this happened in line with, unfortunately, so many racial injustices. And so being able to bring those topics to the front of our programming and, talk about how can we be better allies to Black colleagues, highlighting Black women and people who identify as women and their stories, and, not siloing them into this conversation about just diversity, but allowing them to talk about what they're doing in their day-to-day lives. And so, as many other white people, I had that sort of awakening to realize where we can include more topics that are combating racial injustices and bringing visibility to a lot of these topics that we hadn't been doing before. Because I think, along with the pandemic and a lot of things, we're realizing a lot of white people have come to this white awakening of understanding that we've been failing by not being fully anti-racist, right? We maybe supported things with a hashtag or saying certain things, but really now taking this time and leveraging the virtual events and leveraging our community to present and talk about those topics. And so, beyond that, just really taking into consideration what the community wants, consistently asking them how we can provide them with the information they need to feel supported and comforted this time. What topics do they really want to hear about, as so many things have changed this year, so have so many of our needs. So, we've got a lot of people who are looking at career transitions. And so how can we support them? Asking for raises in this really difficult time. How can you advocate for yourself as well as others during this time? And so I think that's where we've seen the biggest change with our virtual events. So, reiterating just the topics that we've been talking about, the issues that we've been, tackling, and then again, just the amount of events that we've been hosting per day and per month.
Right. It's interesting how you mentioned, doing a few events before per month, but now today we actually have the opportunity to grow how many events we're doing a month, to dozens, and put those into the hands of other people to do that under our brand. Erin, same thing with Lattice. Your community has also been hosting events since before the world really switched and things changed for everything events. What kind of growth have you seen since Lattice has invested all in on virtual events? Are you scaling your communities, through your events?
Yeah, we're all in. We're all in on virtual events. We're so all in. I'm hiring for a full-time virtual events person right now. So that really shows like the whole marketing team's support behind virtual events. We're ready to pivot back in person when that happens, but we really believe that virtual events are here to stay. Part of the reason for that is Nicole touched on this slightly, is access, right? So more people can access the community resources. So actually pre-COVID, we were just ramping up our community-specific events. So we have our community is we think of it slightly separate than our marketing audience. And we were just starting to do these community meetups, for the Atlanta channel or the New York channel. Then COVID hit. And we thought we tried to keep it regionally specific for a while. And then it was like, why? What do people actually want from these regional events? They want to learn new skills. They want to get knowledge, maybe learn about new jobs. And so many of that networking, so much of that networking aspect is no longer regionally specific. So we actually started to do more community events based on topics. We have two. One is like a workshop type community event, cameras on, it's tactical. You're in breakout rooms, you're sharing knowledge and coming back with actual takeaways you got from other people in the HR industry. The other is a more community-driven webinar, so a thought leadership opportunity to elevate one community member based on a community-like driven subject. So actually our events program and our community programs have grown much more since COVID in a way that I think they wouldn't have been able to if we were just trying to get these regional meetups off the ground. So they have changed. I think it's a really new and exciting opportunity because it's giving more access to more people.
Interesting. Quick follow-up for that. How have you seen networking differ virtually, virtual networking differ from the in-person that you had seen at your regional events?
It's totally different. It's not the same. It's not the same. I think, I think you need to lean in to what makes virtual networking different. So like virtual networking usually needs more of a lift from an organizer or more of prompting. You're not going to have those organic conversations like, someone's grabbing like a beer at the bar and you bump into them, you see their name tag. You need more lift from your event organizers to facilitate those conversations, whether those are just blatant discussion topics or a moderator coming in and saying, hey, Vera, what do you think about that? The networking angle is harder, it's more awkward, and it involves more lift from the community leader. And I think that's a great skill for community leaders to develop, actually. It's like more of a facilitation role. But I think anyone trying to say like, it's awesome and it doesn't take a lot of work, not true.
Right. Well, you heard it here. If anyone knows a good virtual experience manager, Erin is looking for one if you could send one her way.
True.
Vera, with Ironclad, the community, we're at the end of 2020. It's been a long year, but we have to ask, how does your community, specifically at Ironclad, feel about virtual events now and today?
Our community is interesting because they're in-house lawyers and they tend to be introverted already. They also always prefer face-to-face events because there's this, they want to build trust and credibility, and they never really like the facelessness of online, like not seeing who's behind the name. They always want to know who they're talking to because they're always thinking about like, who am I talking to and giving advice to or sharing knowledge with, because there's that sense of like, my reputation's attached to this, right? So I was a little bit worried like how they would react to the virtual nature of our events. But what I did was I curated really specific intimate experiences so that I would put 10 legal leaders like across sports industries, for example, together in a room so that they could share that knowledge. But I also made it fun and interactive so that it wasn't that they were just showing up and awkwardly being on Zoom, right? They basically felt like, because we were facilitating, like what Erin said, they felt a little bit more at ease and able to like loosen up. And we did that, I have to say, with like scotch tastings and shove boxes. It's amazing what a little bit of alcohol can do to I would say, I hate to say use the word lubricate, but like to facilitate the experience, but it did help a bit. And so after doing these very, small events, 10 person, again, like I said, I always follow up with an NPS survey, and I was pleasantly surprised with the feedback. The lawyers in our community already feel like they're stigmatized because they're like, a lot of people treat legal like, I don't want to even tell you what I'm doing because you might get me in trouble because I'll admit that I'm doing something I'm not supposed to do, right? So they're always like, kind of like have the shell already. But they felt really appreciated that we even thought of them, because again, they're like kind of shunned by the organization sometimes as that bad cop. And so they felt like they were no longer isolated. And so one quote I was really touched by was like, we're together even when we're apart. And the person, the guests were like, this is the lifeline I needed because I felt so alone. And it's not just another Zoom. I was actually able to connect with people that understood how I feel in this isolation where they're like doing more with less. And so I really enjoyed the ability to like matchmake, if you will, community members that I knew that were like going to be a right fit for each other.
Got it. So you felt like those facilitating experiences has been extremely important. So that's how you've been kind of gathering this information as far as what do participants need today within their virtual events. And it's coming down to more engagement, but you're using your surveys as a way to get continuous feedback from that.
Continuous feedback, right? And again, they prefer to share knowledge, talking live versus like in an online chat. They don't like Slack or like online forums. They like actually they either like Google groups, like direct email, like they like to read a lot. Lawyers love to read, or they like to talk. And so those are the two ways that we interact with them primarily.
Absolutely. Nicole, we talk a lot about accessibility in online spaces, whether we're chatting or whether we are networking, engaging with people, with sponsors, with individuals, but also with, of course, with in-person and virtual events. At the Power to Fly team, what are you doing to keep your events accessible to everyone?
I absolutely love this question because I think it highlights so much of where we as Power to Fly thrive. So all of our events are completely free, whether it's a client hiring event or it's a community event. And so it's free to member to Power to Fly and to access all of those recordings. We have a content library that's huge, that covers tons of different topics, ageism to how to be an ally to the trans community, negotiation, building a resume, all of that. And then additionally, we have a career coach that does a free 30-minute session 3 times a month. And so people have access to that for free. And then, beyond that, we've moved into actually holding conversations in Spanish. I live in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I'm fluent in speaking Spanish. And we actually have a pretty large group of team members that span all across Central and South America and the US who speak English, and then in Europe as well. And so starting to offering those conversations in Spanish for people to make that more accessible to our Latinx community. And then also, we're moving into holding our events and having them closed captions. So those who are hearing impaired can also access those events.
Right, kind of goes in further into virtually, we're able to scale a number of events and really like have a larger footprint in places that we just simply didn't have to before and launch into new markets. And it's a lot of exciting opportunities that we can do there, but at the same time, making them accessible for everyone to be able to participate, facilitate, and network too.
Totally. And I think especially if you're going to talk about career growth, there's so many things that are out of reach for people who are in between jobs or, are living in areas that are less developed. And so providing them those free opportunities to learn about what does a hiring manager want to see about my, product portfolio or my UX portfolio. And so definitely, I totally agree with that.
Right. And it sounds like you've seen quite a bit of change to your community growth because of it.
Yeah, I think obviously having them free has always been an awesome place to sell to people to attend our events. And then with the additional growth in the amount of events, we've seen tons of growth this year. Actually, at I think the 4 or 5 month point into the year, we had already reached what our numbers were last year. And so I think, that was right in time with the pandemic and coming, full swing into the pandemic. That was when we saw our biggest amount of growth for, tuning into virtual events and attending those virtual events. So registering and also attending.
Right. Wow. Hey, Erin, what metrics are you using to track that? What metrics are you tracking to prove the value and growth of your community as it relates to your events?
Yeah, great question. And it's a journey, right? It's an evolution as your community grows, but also as, some of your back end roles like ops teams grow. So I'll list the metrics, but I'll also caveat that it's a continual arm that you need to exercise. So we track just for events, and then I'll get to community. We track number of registrants and number of attendees. So general show rate, we have about a 32% show rate for every webinar we do. We track pipeline driven and influenced, cost per registrant and cost per attendee if we're thinking about sponsoring event. So, how much does each registrant cost? How much does each attendee to our session cost? So that's a new one. And then we really look at the percentage of ideal customer profile registrants or attendees that come to our event, right? Because you can have, 20,000 people show up to your event. Are they actually the right people to be at your event? So those are some of the more events metrics we track. Talking about community directly, we track, for example, at our latest big virtual conference, we tracked the amount of signups that came to our community after the event. So we sort of had a little resources for humans click action at our conference, and we had 900 signups the next day, or applications to sign up. So those are the things that we track in terms of community specifically for our events. And participation is always great, but it's all of the metrics that are around participation that I think people should be tracking as well.
Wow, that's really impressive. 900 signups from one of your events in one day.
Put the button out there. Make sure to always have it out there. People will click.
Have it out there. Okay, that's what I was actually going to ask. Like, what else? What, like a rule of thumb or something that a community professional looking to grow their community through their events can learn from something like that? But it looks like have your call to actions available.
Yeah, include them on all your follow-ups too, right? So like signups and RSVPs are a continual journey. So even, you always have that ask, like, hey, we missed you at this event, join the community. Hey, you attended this event, are you in the community? There's more access to events once you're in there. So always be putting your community in your marketing materials from events, or if they're for events, that's even better. But you can always ask, and it really helps. Community members for us have like a higher likelihood to actually buy our product. So putting people in our community, even though we don't sell specifically to the community, there's a fine boundary at Lattice on that, is always a good indicator for our brand. So always ask, you miss the shots you don't take, or whatever that is.
That's great feedback. That's great information. And Nicole, Vera, I'd love to get your thoughts on this too. We're trying to understand growing our community through our events, but how we're using our metrics to really prove the growth and value to our higher ups, so we can consistently justify our everything when it comes to how we grow the community. What else could you add to this?
So I'll kick it off here and just say, so we keep it really simple, I feel, but then again, I guess it's always relative, right? So really we just track the number of RSVPs and the number of attendees in events, same thing to show, growth rate and all that. As well as we're tracking our new referral system that we implemented. And so seeing how many people are having conversions from referring the events. And then additionally, we actually track our rewatch emails as well. So this means when somebody comes to the site and finds something interesting and they want to rewatch the event totally for free again, but they can do that. And, I think Erin kind of mentioned something that leads into a point that I think is interesting, that, even when you get a huge boom on a certain event, I don't think it always speaks to that being a great topic to have time and time again. I have people that'll come and say, hey, what's a really great topic to have? And I honestly hate that question, because it's so relative to the time. It's so relative to the person. It's so relative to the situation. I had the same event about networking being transactional a month and a half apart. And the second one got more than double the amount of RSVPs in the first one, but it was pretty much the same topic. And so there's so many things that go into there. And I think that's so important to call out, because, we can beat a dead horse when we talk about how to network virtually, how to, build our resume for the right company. And so, it's important that as we're leading virtual events to innovate and be creative and try to keep up with the times and what's happening, in the now, in the news, right?
Absolutely.
I can't echo that enough. One of our most impactful events has been a business continuity webinar we did on April 30th. It's like influenced $2 million in pipeline. Even it's just amazing that people are still looking at that, because how do you continue to do business in a time where you don't even know what the future is going to be? So that webinar surprised and blew me away, like just the return on that. But in terms of tracking event metrics, I track every event as a campaign in Salesforce. And then I report on the attendance rate, but what's really important to the business, especially to our finance team, is the total pipeline influence, like meaning like how many renewals do we get? How many new business opportunities do we get? What's the cost per opportunity? Like I might have spent $300 per person, but like how did that influence the opportunities that were opened? And then I look at the return on those investments. And so I also report on the ideal customer profile. So are we targeting the right people? And the NPS, obviously, just to see like, is this program worth continuing to do? I discovered in the course of this year that one of our programs called Rooftop Law School, which was actually in existence before I joined Ironclad. It was like a virtual, it was a in-person meetup where the lawyers in our company met up with other lawyers outside and had pizza and beer and talked about case law in a Socratic method as if they're back in law school. We realized like we were continuing to do those, but they weren't really hitting the right target people. It ended up being the wrong people. And so we discontinued that program because of the metrics that I was tracking. But we're bringing more value to the community with things that they do care about, which are, these, what I'm calling like lunch and learns, essentially just getting people together to talk about their issues or their problems. And really like what Nicole and Erin have been saying, to really address the things that really matter most to them. Right. So like really leaning into what people care about, but at the same time, we are seeing that return because people want to continue engaging when they're finding that we're relevant to them.
Wow. Okay. That's amazing. So this is the last question that I really want to get all your answers on, but we're talking about metrics, but a common challenge that we're having, we're tracking RSVPs and attendance, but we're seeing our conversions a little bit off. And so we're basically, people aren't coming to the event, even though they're registering for it. We're putting free events out there. So just like a quick 30 seconds response from each person, but what steps are you taking to actually ensure people are showing up to your virtual events?
I can take that. Actually, I've actually been surprised. Our attendance rate is actually higher now that it's virtual. And I think it's because we're doing experiences. And so we're mailing people things. So I hate to say it, they might feel a little guilty getting a bottle of wine and not showing up. So it's a little bit of incentive. It's, it's a $20 bottle of wine. They'll still show up for that. Or like if I send them a virtual gift card for lunch, like for a DoorDash, just to show up and participate, you pretty much get what you put in. And so that's why I tell the attendees is like, if you're willing to show up, you're going to get the value out of this program. And so they have. And so we've seen our attendance rate upwards to like 60 to 76%, where it was sometimes in person a lot lower because, these are busy lawyers who are trying to attend to all the company matters. And so I feel like now that they're at home, we have a captive audience and they do want to do something. Additionally, we've been doing our programs at 4:30 at the end of the day, whereas before in person, we were doing like at 6 or 7 o'clock at night. And, with traffic and commuting, sometimes they feel like I'm just not going to show up. It's not worth it. But now that everybody's home, they're able to show up and participate.
With a gift like that, I'll go to any of it, sure.
You can't turn down like we've been doing chef's boxes, so sending people ingredients for like a lobster guacamole and a mezcal cocktail, and so they can't really say no to that on a Friday night.
Very nice.
I would sign up for that.
I would too. You can send it my way and I'll just show up even though I'm not a lawyer. But I would love to jump in here as well. And, I would say that, so we've seen, consistently this 45 to 55% retention rate across the board. So people showing up to our events. Although, ensuring that people show up, I feel like we also have to be graceful to people during this time, right? So like, I've seen that a lot of people register just to get the rewatch email. And so we send a rewatch email afterwards where people can tune into it at their convenience. And I think that's so important to remember, right? Like, I think the RSVP shows enough intent to say, hey, I want to go to your event. And so I think, that's just really important to me as a 2-year-old mom as a mom with a 2-year-old who does not sleep. I'm not a 2-year-old mom. It is very challenging to think of where I have to be and what I should be doing when I've already got like tons of other pressures. And so, I really just try to keep that in mind and keep it casual and, try to encourage people to show up. And, that's where they get the most out of it anyway. So I think the honor system really works.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Erin, do you want to have the last word here?
Huge +1 to both of these. RSVP is the first step in an attendee journey. Even if people don't show, you have all the resources now to follow up with them. And the second is that we gave away a Peloton and it was a huge success. So give people stuff they want.
Wow. Well, thank you so much. This has been an amazing panel. I loved hearing your answers. I definitely took a lot away from it and hope other community and event professionals get the same out of it as well.
Thank you so much, everybody. I feel like this advice is so good. I love that you all are like, oh yeah, give people gifts. People love gifts. This is the answer, is gifts. I mean, the holiday trivia, I was like, oh, maybe I'll take a break. But then he was like, you could win chocolate. I was like, I have to do the trivia. Awesome. Well, we do have a couple of questions that have come in from the audience while you were chatting. So I think we only have time for maybe each of you to answer only one question or something. So if you love the question, you really want to answer it, raise your hand and we'll get you to go ahead. So Steve asked a couple of questions, but I would love to hear, did the pricing strategy differ from in-person events to virtual events? How did you combat ticketing and pricing in paid events?
I can't speak to that because all of our events are free. So, but if someone else wants to take that, we basically see the return on investment when we spend a certain amount of money. We see it return 10 times X, so it's been amazing. So if someone wants to take the paid part, I can, but I'll just say sometimes offering things for free is totally fine.
Yeah, we have only done maybe our first user conference was a paid event. This virtual user conference was not a paid event. The way you can justify the ROI is you can accommodate way more people, right? So you have one budget. It used to be split up among 500 people. Now it's split up among, tens of thousands of people. And so while you're not getting that incoming revenue, you get way more people there. And so that's actually like a cheaper cost per attendee than you had before.
Excellent. Thank you. Perfect. And now Caitlin asks, on the note of accessibility, we ensure we create captions for our events, but do you have any thoughts on how to provide captions in different languages to be inclusive of other languages and cultures?
So I can take that one really quickly. As we're moving into captioning our events, I don't know of any ones that capture other languages. We did try it actually in Spanish and it did not work. So I wouldn't recommend it, but I would love to investigate that and hopefully, connect with you and give you a better answer.
And let's ask Erin's question. Who I believe was the winner who actually got the chocolate box. We have a similar segregation between marketing and the formal events team and our community and related events. Any guidance on forging a partnership between the two for cross promotion?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually was thinking with our community manager, Grace, about this. It's all about the content created from community events, right? So that's how you loop in the bigger marketing aspect. So when our community meets for a workshop, we do like a follow-up article for takeaways, or maybe we record a webinar that we give access to us like a marketing promo material. And it actually gives us a lot more credibility, right? Because it's not someone in marketing who is saying all of these takeaways. It's actually from the community members. And then it creates a nice little loop, right? Want to participate in this event, see the takeaways in real person, join the community. So that's how we sort of like bridge that gap, is the sort of after materials from community events.
Awesome. I think we've got time for one more. So I'm going to choose the most liked question in the tab here. And it comes from Beth. Great name, Beth. How can you structure events in the beginning if you know you're going to get small numbers? How can you adapt events? And what kind of events should you do for those early adopters of your community?
I can take it quickly and just put my quick input. I mean, I think keeping it consistent is important, whether it's, a small intimate event, and encouraging lots of participation and allowing the space for people to talk. And I mean, maybe when it gets into like a really, really big event, you might want to look at different functions. I know Zoom offers the function to have like a webinar setting, so not as many people can chime in and come off of mute. But I think, it's important to think across the board what's functional for when you have bigger events, when you have, 300, 400, 500 RSVPs versus maybe having 10 RSVPs. Because I think also as a community, that's something that's so important. I think Vera and Erin can speak to that as well. They each probably have their own setup for how they run events, as does Power to Fly, and consistency is key, so people know what to expect.
Yeah, I would plus one that and the consistency, and also like understand what the intent of the event is. Is it the one-to-many, or do you really want people to really connect? And so do you structure that with breakout rooms? Like who's you facilitating? What community members do you tag to be your ambassadors? And so really think about what the outcomes you want to accomplish with whatever program that you're trying to build and deploy, so that you can understand like how to structure it.
Perfect. And now we only have like 10 seconds left, but Michel, I'm dying to know, where did you get your sweater?
This came straight from the Star Wars shop. I think it got advertised to me on Instagram because they know my likes. I have other Star Wars things in this house. It's kind of like a half Tatooine art piece that back there. But this came from the Star Wars shop itself. I think it can be found on Instagram. I can send you a link.
There you go. You heard it here, folks. Instagram marketing works. Targeted marketing works. Well, thank you all so very much for joining us today at the CMX Winter Soiree. It was fantastic to have you sharing your advice and your experiences.